Chris, welcome to the Peel.
We're back.
The second time guest. First one was Dan at ChainGuard, which they went 0 to 40 in revenue in 2 years. Those are big shoes to fill.
I know. We went 0 to 15 billion in under 2 years, 20 months to be exact. So we're going.
15 billion in revenue?
That would be a lot. That would be a lot of revenue. I'm not Cursor. Assets on platform.
Assets on platform. Okay. So for someone who isn't familiar with Hanover Park, they didn't listen to the first one, which we'll link in the show notes for people if they want to listen to the year-old conversation. What is Hanover Park for people who don't know?
You can think about us as financial infrastructure for the investment firm. And so today there's like all these insane armies of human duct tape, we call it, that sticks together all the back and middle office to do all of the financial reporting for the limited partners at these firms, for the CFOs and all that kind of stuff. And what we've built is like unified software plus AI plus services to do all the financial reporting, which would be called fund administration. And then we also have a bunch of portfolio management and monitoring tools. And kind of like our thesis is that, B2B SaaS is dead, which I said literally on this podcast a year and a half ago. That's come true with Claude. These like thin layers on top of data that you don't own are things that are being disrupted. And so our goal is like build the system of record for the fund. We did that. And then owning and controlling that data can deliver a better product for the CFO.
So I know you just announced some news within the past day or two, 3, whenever people listen to this. What's the thing you just announced?
Breaking news heard here on the Peel. We raised a $27 million Series A led by Emergence Capital. Lux, Susa participated as well to build the financial infrastructure for the investment firm.
And how did this kind of come about? Like what was sort of the setup sort of leading into it and like the process of raising a Series A? Because it can be hard sometimes.
We were growing really fast. We went from like 1 to 7-ish billion of assets on platform late last year. People were super excited. And we were kind of like, what I wanted to validate is like the size of the opportunity, right? It's like you have 100 trillion of global assets. Largely, these investment firms are paying millions and millions of dollars a year to these outsourced providers. And we said, like, can I provably take this from a human heavy services business from something that's scalable? And so that's what we validated. And then we went to the market. It was a very quick process. It only took kind of a few weeks or so. And there was this crazy moment where Jake Saper, who joined our board from Emergence, flew in from San Francisco to New York City on Friday night. He's like, I'm going to take you out to dinner. It was like a 3-hour long dinner. And I was like, when are we actually going to talk about the terms here? Are we just going to like keep looking at each other, eating omakase back and forth? And at the very end, he's like, all right, so let's talk about the terms. And so we end up like negotiating these terms and he literally nothing. It's like Friday night at 9 p.m. I go back to my apartment and at midnight, I get a phone call. I'm like, why am I still up right now? And he's like, term sheets in your inbox right now. What are you doing? You have 48 hours to make a decision. I was like, oh, that was fun. So I was like, this is great. Now, we'd done a bunch of back channeling with Jake and he had been super close to the team at Susa as well. And he has kind of been the leader in what I call like AI enabled services, which we can talk about. And so pretty excited to team up with him and the Emergence team.
This episode is brought to you by Numeral. Numeral is the fastest, easiest way to stay compliant with US sales tax and global VAT. It's easy to set up, and they automatically handle all registrations, ongoing filings, and their API provides sales tax rates wherever you need them with all the integrations you need. Numeral supports over 2,000 customers in both the US and globally, and they pride themselves on white glove, high-touch customer service. Plus, they guarantee their work, and they'll cover the difference if they mess anything up. They're fresh off a fundraise, closing a $35 million Series B from Mayfield, which they're going to reinvest into building an even better product. If you want to put your sales tax on autopilot, check out Numeral at their new domain, numeral.com. That's numeral.com for the end-to-end platform for sales tax and VAT compliance. This episode is brought to you by Flex. It's the AI native private bank for business owners. I use Flex personally, and I love it because they use AI to underwrite the cash flow of your business, giving you a real credit line. The best part is 60 days of float, double the industry standard. Flex has all the features you'd expect from a modern financial platform, like unlimited cards, expense management, bill pay that syncs with your credit line, and their new consumer card, Flex Elite. Flex Elite is a brand new ramp-like experience for your personal life. A credit card with points, premium perks, concierge services, personal banking, cars and expense management for your family, net worth tracking across public and private assets, and a whole lot more fully integrated with your business spend. One card for your businesses, one card for your personal life, one card for everything. To skip the waitlist, head to flex.one and use my code Turner to get an additional 100,000 points worth $1,000 after spending your first $10,000 with Flex Elite. That's flex.one and code Turner for $1,000 on your first $10,000 of spend. Thank you, Flex. And now let's jump in.
That's probably an interesting thing to get into, this whole concept of AI-enabled services businesses, because you just talked about kind of the industry standard, and maybe we could re-hit on like, what does the fund admin market kind of look like, even if we're going back maybe a couple years, or if you don't know Hanover Park exists and you're talking to a fund admin, like what do they kind of look like?
Yeah, it's like army of humans with like a set of disconnected tools that people are buying. And so they might buy, you have a bunch of people in Kentucky, they are fund accountants, they are CPAs, they buy QuickBooks, they buy Excel, they buy Bill.com. They don't build any of their own tech because they call engineering IT. They don't have engineers at their companies. And so a lot of it's just disconnected SaaS tools with human duct tape on top. And so kind of the opportunity set is like, we're like, okay, if we build this ERP for the fund, right? Which is like this, like everyone told us from day zero, this is crazy. Don't do this. Don't build this insanely hard thing to build. You're building financial infrastructure for the most complex firms in the world. We did it. And it was like, if you build this, that gives us the opportunity to have AI agents action on top of that data. And so instead of having people clicking buttons, you can have agents actioning. And then kind of the paradigm that we've had is AI's preparing things and then humans are reviewing things. And so we have, well-trained fund accountants on our team that are reviewing outputs to ensure accuracy. But that's never been done before. Most people, I think in 2018 would be like selling software to a fund admin instead of saying like, I'm actually going to be the full stack fund admin.
Yeah, because a lot of people then would say, what's the size of the fund admin software market? And it's like
tiny.
Yeah, it's like not existent. I mean, they pay for Bill.com and QuickBooks maybe.
Yeah.
Intuit is a big company, but like,
it's tiny.
And so what kind of changed then over the past couple of years to just make this possible? And then you talked about how you built your own general ledger. Why did you need to build a general ledger? So like what's kind of changed? And then why did you do what you did?
Yeah, I think the big why now about this market is like, it's possible now with AI to act as a fund accountant. We call it like an AI fund accountant. And so it's like, okay, we can take this thing that used to be really disconnected tool set with a bunch of humans in a room trying to click buttons and do work to agent can actually like click the buttons and do the preparation work for our team to review. And so I think it was a lot about what does AI unlock? But what I tell the team all day long is like, if you don't have the right bedrock, the right like core foundational system of record, it doesn't matter what AI is doing on top. AI is not going to figure out Bill.com, which randomly isn't going to give access unless you're doing some computer use agent. AI is not going to figure out Excel because there's a lot of limitations. AI is not going to figure out QuickBooks and other things. And so we said like the 80% is building the general ledger from scratch. And then on top of that, having agents action on. So I think the big change here was it's now possible to have agents doing work that would require an army of people. And now, our fund accounting team can just review work.
And it sounds like really what a fund administrator is basically an accounting firm for an investment fund, like in the most simple terms. It's like,
simple terms, financial reporting. They also do like investor services.
And you kind of talked about how we're entering this era of you can build an AI native services company. So traditionally, if I'm thinking about from like a technology business perspective, I'd look at a fund administrator and say, they're not building any technology. It's just mostly people. It doesn't scale in the most efficient way. So what's kind of happening in this sort of like broader AI native services? Like, are there certain things that needs to be true in order for that to like unlock like this massive opportunity?
Yeah, I think we think a lot, and this is something we've spoken a lot at the board level in the past like quarter or so, which is like, how do we productize the services layer, which is like, we are tracking key metrics on things like what % of cash is auto-categorized, what % of times when a customer sends us an email with a request that AI agent can action on it with no edits, right, by the human team.
This is sort of like a customer service type of automation as well. And it's like, so you're automating like the accounting, you're automating the customer service, you're automating like other software that you're kind of starting to build on top of things?
Yeah, a lot of it is like productizing these like core services delivery metrics, we call it, which are things like cache categorization, email agents that are actioning on like customer requests and other stuff. And so that's been like the key part. Without that, you are just, and I think the reckoning will happen in 2026 for AI native services businesses that are growing revenue, but not actually productizing the services part.
Oh, wow. Is that a common
very
thing?
common. I think a lot of people are doing that.
Are there certain categories you think it works best in? Fund admin? I'm assuming that's one of them.
Well, I'm talking my own book now. This is talking my own book. I think there's a lot around like, what is the data layer that we have access to that can enable us to deliver a better service? And so part of what we've done is said, like, how do we build wedge products around the core fund admin? Because if I go to someone and be like, I'm going to give you slightly better fund accounting, or I'm going to give you 10 times better fund, that's still kind of interesting, but not the most compelling. And so we built a lot around AI native waterfall modeling, which is adjacent, or portfolio management, which is adjacent, or portfolio monitoring, which is adjacent. So it's like, what does the full bundle look like? That's not just the core fund admin.
And so the kind of like the core customer or core user, buyer, decision maker of this is a CFO of an investment firm, like the finance leader in an investment firm.
The CFOs are my heroes.
Yeah, I know you love CFOs. So what can they use AI for? Because you just mentioned some of these things like a waterfall model. Maybe you can explain why that is. Maybe it's not worth explaining, but you can just like make that in Excel kind of, right? Like, so what's the importance of all this stuff?
So I think there's like, our goal is to become the default for how fund CFOs adopt AI. I think there's a lot of noise in the market. There's a bunch of providers, I call it the army of overpriced SaaS tools, that are offering like, here's what AI is. And the CFO is like, this doesn't actually help me. And so part of our goal was we're launching an MCP server, which you can think about that as an API for AI, right? Which is like, I can have all of this data that Hanover Park has inside, which is your LP data, your portfolio data, your fund performance data, all the data that might be in disconnected systems is now in one place. And now you can give that and feed that directly into Claude. You can feed it into ChatGPT or Gemini. And now you can instantly access and say like, generate me a report with Yale Endowment's commitments across our 5 funds with a pretty graph with my logo on it, with our top 5 performing portfolio companies by ownership percentage, MOIC, and gross IRR. That is like literally 100 hours of work to do across a bunch of random tools today. And now you can instantly do that through Hanover Park. And so I think that's some of the power, is being able to like feed this into the tool you're already using as well.
And that's something like the IR team might make. So it sounds like it's not even just CFOs, it's like other people at the firm can maybe start using the tool too.
What we realized is there's so many like CFOs and finance teams are like drowning because they get like hundreds of data requests that are like, hey, can you pull this like random initial versus follow-on thing that like of my venture fund portfolio companies that we have no idea what the stat is? And the CFO is like, oh my God, what do I do? They're like, do I just like run around and like try to go into 17 spreadsheets that haven't been updated in 3 months to figure out where this is? Mm-hmm. This enables anyone to instantly access your data, as well as like the managing partner or the founder of the firm. So they don't have to be begging their CFO to get back to them in 3 days. They can instantly access it, which gives a lot of credibility to the finance team.
There's a lot of these kind of like, I don't even know like what you call it, like banker AI tools or like, you know, junior credit analyst type AI modeling tools. Does it start to kind of flow into that? Not really. Like, where's the delineation between all that stuff?
Yeah, I think like part of we call ourselves the anti-GPT wrapper. There's a lot of companies that are fine, that are basically like, I am going to take GPT, I'm going to verticalize it for something specific. I'm going to enable it to be better for a lawyer, a banker, or whatever it is. Part of our goal was actually, we're the opposite of that because we did the really hard thing first. Building a general ledger from scratch is one of the hardest technical challenges you have. So hard that our early investors were like, what is going on? This is crazy. And so we're like, once you do that though, you unlock all the ability for AI to action on data that you couldn't before. And so part of this was building the GL sets the stage to build the magical MCP server on top versus the opposite, which is I'm going to get data that everyone else has access to, and then I'm going to make it slightly better on the AI front. So that's kind of how we thought about the paradigm, which was different.
So, and it's basically, you know, you might describe, if you're trying to like hype up this in the most simple terms possible, you'd say it's like an AI native fund administrator.
Yeah, I think AI native fund admin, strike that. Fund admin, most unsexy term in the world. I kind of think about it as like financial infrastructure for the investment firm. So Stripe did this for payments. Ramp did this for expenses. Hanover Park's doing it for investments.
Okay.
That's kind of how we think about it.
And like you didn't even start with like, hey, we're building an AI model for your fund. You started with like, we're building a general ledger that, I mean, general ledgers have existed since like the invention of commerce, basically, like ancient Italy or whatever.
Yeah, I think the vertical integration story is around like, okay, what is the core job to be done? Every single fund in the entire world needs to generate quarterly financials for their limited partners. Great. You're going to have to pay someone to do that. May as well be us, right? And kind of think about that as like the core layer. But on top of that, now it's like, okay, I need to help a CFO make better decisions. Great. All of that data is now sitting in Hanover Park to help you make better decisions. On top of that, maybe in the long term, it's like, how can I unlock alpha for the investment firm? How can we have this investment firm make better decisions on top of all the source of truth data that Hanover Park has? And so that's kind of how I think about the layering from most unsexy to most sexy.
And so what makes it so hard to make a general ledger? Because it's just like some accounting, like it's like debits and credits. Like, I don't know, it doesn't seem that hard.
Yeah, I know. So I think partnership accounting, and this is tune out if this is the most boring thing you've ever heard in the English ever. So there's a lot of complexity with fund accounting. And so we're kind of like, okay, build debits and credits for a simple small business is like table stakes, honestly. But saying, okay, I have all of these different limited partners in a fund. They have different allocation percentages. They have different side letters waiving economic terms. They have blockers and splitters and aggregators, and they have 50 legal entities for one fund. All of that complexity of the interaction between all these legal entities and all of the partners in those entities gets crazy.
And then there's multiple funds sometimes too, right?
Dozens of funds. And then you have a management company that needs to talk to the funds. And so I think the complexity lies in like, think about these investment firms as the most complex financial institutions in the world. And organizing that data is crazy, right? And so we kind of had to build a system that can handle the most complex investment firms in the world.
And is this sort of why it was just like let's just throw some bodies at this and people just manually do it?
Correct.
And that's kind of how it
And
evolves.
I think a lot of the underlying tools that were built, there's some like specific fund accounting tools that people had tried to build, but it's like the problem is there was a disconnect between the people doing the work, the fund accountants, and the people building the product, random engineers at a different company. That disconnect created tons of problems because no one's actually talking to their quote unquote customer all day. And so what we've done is said, hey, we have this 60-person room in Flatiron where we all go to every day called an office. Let's all put the best I call it the Navy SEALs of fund accounting, alongside, lead engineers to kind of like work in harmony.
And the last time you came on the podcast, we had an interesting conversation where the traditional fund admin sees like an engineer, they call them the IT department.
Yeah.
Like your job is to like get people access to like the HR system or something, or sign up for QuickBooks and generate someone an account on the different software you're using.
I love you talking about fund accounting. This is hilarious.
Well, and so it is, so you just basically like who you're competing against. You're like, you are an engineering product led company that is competing against people who think about it as an IT department.
Yes.
Basically, like it's like a back of house versus front of house thing.
Yeah, I think I think about like if you're one of the greatest engineers in the world, and we've like built this hacker culture. We had someone who dropped out of Harvard. He was like a sophomore in college. We have a Team USA drone racer. We have people that have multiple ex-founders, former and future founders, I call it. So like we built this like really talent dense engine product team. Those people would never, in their wildest considerations or nightmares, join a legacy fund admin who doesn't care about them. And so our goal is like, how do we build this financial infrastructure for the most complex firms in the world? If Ramp can make expense management sexy, we can make investment sexy, right? And so I kind of think about this as like the most elite engineers on the planet will never join a legacy fund admin because no one cares about them there. What we've done is say, how do we build this like world-class team of engineers, people that drop out of Harvard, Team USA drone racers, shout out JT, former founders, future founders, like people that are top 1% that might join an AI lab, say, hey, I have this like deep obsession with like building for fintech and building for the most complex investment firms in the world. This is a series of insanely hard technical challenges when you think about the data complexity that we have. Let me go do this here. That's very different, obviously, value prop than like a legacy fund admin.
Yeah. Okay. So you've built this environment where the top 0.1% of engineers want to go. How do you like convince people to join? And maybe another interesting thing to hit on is like, how has that changed over time? Like if somebody listened to this first conversation, they can hear your original philosophy. What's changed over the past year?
Yeah, I think I kind of say like growth solves a lot of problems. We went 0 to 15 billion in 21 months since our first line of code. That level of growth proves to the most skeptical engineer on the planet, like, hey, this is working. And if I have a deep interest in fintech, this could be compelling and interesting. And the second piece is like, what you prioritize. There's a lot of companies who have 100 people on the team and like 80 salespeople. That is not the company that I'm building. I have still scaled us to 15 billion of assets with no other salespeople on the team, primarily because I'm just a founder with a product and a plan. We don't need an army of salespeople. That resonates with the best engineering teams and the best engineers on the planet because they're thinking like, okay, what is prioritized? What is hired for? If this is an eng-first hacker culture, that matters deeply when I think about like how I'm going to be prioritized, first-class citizen, et cetera, in the type of company I'm at versus an army of salespeople that are like pushing on engineering when it comes to building.
So then how do you guys figure out kind of what to build when you're talking about like the engineering being first class? Like, and it sounds like it's literally just you, like, are you talking to customers? Are engineers joining calls? Are engineers like demoing the products? Like I know I've seen, I think I've seen something around like when I was hanging out in the office one day, like everyone upload stuff or something. I may be remembering the story wrong, but
so we have demo night every Friday night where literally people are like showing what they're building, both to the fund accounting team as well as on the engineering side, which is really fun. But kind of how we think about what to build is we have a Slack channel with every customer. I said I live in constant paranoia that my customer, is finding a better solution, just like this Jeff Bezos quote of like, oh my God, live in fear that not that your customer's like unhappy, that they'll find something better. And so like we constantly want to be like pushing the envelope to invent on our customers' behalf. And so we take that super seriously when it comes to feedback. And being in a Slack channel with every customer, our engineering team is like blown away by like how much this matters for the CFO. If we are their most important vendor, the things that we deliver for them can really change everything. And so like the level of importance creates a sense of urgency, especially on the team. And then on what we're building, what we're working on, it's like, we really said, start with the unsexy, automate core financial reporting, automate core fund admin. And then now we built like a series of portfolio management and portfolio monitoring and all the adjacencies that like should live in one place that haven't. But stay tuned for more stuff.
So can you give me some examples if I'm not super familiar of like what some of those tools might be and then, like what I'm using them for?
Yeah. So say, you invest in Hanover Park at the Series A, you get a set of legal documents or cap table or something like that. Typically, these legacy providers, all they do is like save those docs randomly down.
It's in
randombox.com or Google Drive or something super random and be like, oh yeah, like I guess I'll look at that if I need to look at it for audit at the end of the year. And they'll like book some super boring accounting stuff that the CFO doesn't care about.
Sometimes there will be like a shared drive though. You can access it from like your browser and you can download it.
You can download the file. And so what we said is we were like, amazing. We have this leverage position because we're doing our fund accounting that we have all those docs in real time. And so you just forward that over email to us and say, hey, I don't need to click 50 buttons in a UI that was built in 2018 to create more work for me as the CFO. I can just delegate to a Hanover Park AI email agent. That email agent reads it, it uploads it, it AI extracts and processes like 150 key terms. And so now I've enriched and been like, hey, not just cost and fair value. I have how much do I own to this company? What's the ownership percentage from the cap table? What's the latest valuation, post-money valuation? Who are my co-investors in the deal, right? Like all these other like important details that should live in one place that don't. And so we bundled this like quote unquote AI portfolio management tool in for free alongside the core fund admin services.
And I think you mentioned it took you about 9 months to kind of make this. Am I remembering that number right?
Boy, yeah. So this is a very complex technical, like if you're an engineer listening to this, it's like, you want the hardest technical challenges in the most complex industry, like this is the place for you. We've processed 200,000 documents at this point. I'm talking random Indian language docs where AI translating into English and like all this crazy complexity in the pursuit of like, how does the customer lift 0 fingers, just forward it over to us and let us take care of the rest?
And so like the what was like the hardest part about doing all this? Is it like natural language processing, like extraction? Is it like organizing it in like a sortable, efficient way?
The extraction is really complex because like, it's really simple if you're doing a Series A in the United States like we did. But like if you're doing a deal in Europe, if you're having a random like mistake made by the lawyers on the cap table, okay, if we have like a random Excel file that doesn't make it in that we don't get access. And so there's just like, I call it the land of infinite edge cases, which is just like highly complex documents that like, kind of what the answer should be at the end potentially, but it's really, really hard to figure out with all the different legalese that's in there. And so that was part of the challenge.
So you walk into the office at Hanover Park in the morning. What's it like?
So at 9 a.m. exactly on the dot, I literally walk out of my office and we just have a speaker blasting music. My team will hate this, but it's literally one of two songs every single day for the past 21 months since we founded the company. It's One More Time by Daft Punk or it's Levels by Avicii. There was a period where we shifted a little bit, given literally my entire team now says to me, these are the songs that I never want to hear outside of work ever again. But we do that. And so it's a fun environment where we're like blasting music. We go right into engineering stand-up. We then go right into the accounting team stand-up and we kind of get right into our day. But my goal is like, how do we create this like overwhelming sense of energy and like how much we're building and how fast things are moving.
Is there a gong in the office?
How did you hear about this, Tyler? You heard about the gong? So we have this gong in the office. So we've moved offices 3 times in under a year. It's been very entertaining for everyone involved.
I actually haven't seen the new one yet.
You haven't seen the new one?
How close is it?
Yeah, it's right near here.
Okay,
It's literally
can I stop by like right after this?
By after.
All right, I want to see it right after this.
This is
And
great.
I'll head to the airport.
So we have this, in our first office, which was this tiny little office in FiDi, we had this like gong. Anytime we would get a sale, anytime something great would happen, we did this. Now we've moved offices to much bigger offices and we still have a small gong. We've gotten people to say, why do you have this tiny gong? You need to have a bigger gong, Adam Newman, We Crash style. We have not upgraded yet, but the gong is very, the only people allowed to ring the gong are customers. And so we literally had a customer in the office the other day. And I told Johnny, I was like, Johnny, I know this sounds really weird. I'm going to now interrupt the entire team of what they're doing. And you have to ring the gong. So he comes over, he rings the gong, and the entire team goes wild. Like literally people are cheering. They're about I think people are going to jump on top of their desks at this point. And people are getting fired up. Or we ring the gong when it comes to we ship some massive product update or close a sale.
And so those are the only people that are allowed to ring it, right?
That's
no
it.
outsiders.
No outsiders.
So I technically cannot ring the gong.
No investors.
I'd have to be a customer.
You'd have to be a customer.
Which I need to hit that institutional sky. I don't have a CFO.
Yeah.
It's just me.
We're just CFOs.
Soon we'll be on that level soon. And so you had this one guy who I think he biked to work during a snowstorm one time or something. What's the story with that?
So I got to give a shout out to Philip. We literally, it was like a Sunday at 2 p.m. There's a crazy blizzard happening in New York City. And of course, I don't expect people to be in the office. This is hunker down and survive. Yeah. Somehow, Philip decided to go and rent a city bike and bike in a 10 inches snowstorm to the office. And he shows up, he's like, I just biked here. I'm like, how are you alive right now? And he's like, just goes right into coding. And he's like, I'm good. I'm just biking. So I'm like, okay, this is what we screen for though. We have forces of nature that are figuring stuff out.
Was the subway down because there was so much snow? Or
I just think he's anti-subway. That's what it is. He's just not a subway guy. He's like a bike guy.
Interesting. I mean, the streets would probably be open, very clear. You could probably just keep cruising. You probably wouldn't have to stop.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's crazy. It's if it even got plowed that day.
So then what do you guys do on Friday nights? I know you have a Friday night thing that you do.
So we have this thing where we love to celebrate our product velocity is everything, right? We're literally doing multiple releases a day. I would say compared to many legacy players who call engineering IT and don't actually ship net new product, our goal is how do we have the highest product velocity out there? And so we have multiple product releases a day. And what's really fun is we have engineers demo what they built every few weeks on Friday at 6 p.m. where they'll literally everyone will huddle around what we call the podcasting couch. It's not actually for podcasting, but
podcasting couch. We should have done this there on the podcasting couch.
On the podcasting couch. We have this massive couch, which people have gotten excited about, that literally everyone goes onto that couch and like we demo like the latest and greatest and people go crazy. We're playing music. People are getting fired up about what's going on. And so it's been a fun little ritual to inform the broader team as we've scaled a lot in terms of team in the past 6 months to like tell everyone what we're working on.
So this is not like a hackathon random like side project type of thing. It is you're showing what you built in the product.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. And you said you're shipping multiple things per day. So is it Friday? You spend like an hour and just everything that was shipped, people just kind of go through and show what they shipped?
And there's a lot of times when people get feedback. So like we'll ship something and it'll be like an iteration and the fund accounting team will be like, oh my God, this could be amazing with these two changes. Or, hey, we get CFO feedback and people are excited. I actually want to start bringing customers to the office for these Friday demos to see the latest and greatest. Because like what we've had is like, I had a customer call me and be like, hey, you're our most important vendor. I love Hanover Park. I don't think anyone's ever said that about a fund admin before. Or like, I love Hanover Park. Can we host a customer conference at the office? And can everyone just like jam and huddle about like what the future of finance can look like in this space? And so we've not done that yet. Stay tuned. But it'd be great to get more like live feedback at these demo nights.
So when somebody comes across Hanover Park, what is like the reason that they choose Hanover Park versus, I mean, there's a couple other options that are out there. Like what is usually the discovery process of finding it and then the decision-making process usually?
All the problems come from if you're just, a $50 million venture fund and it's super simple and it's one person in a room, like things are super simplistic. Like there's not a lot of complexity, but as you scale, all of these manual processes break. And so you're like, it went from, oh, I did this one manual process for 2 hours a month to I'm doing 5 hours of manual processes a day just to tread water. And so therein lies the problem with all the legacy players where things are broken and held together by legacy human duct tape and Excel, right? And so that's problem one. It's like, oh my God, I can't scale. Problem two is like, I've heard of all these good things about AI. ChatGPT's out, Claude's out, but what has it even done for CFOs? Nothing, right? And people are frustrated by that. And so it's a combination of things are breaking while we scale and, oh my God, like how can I adopt AI? And so we're kind of at the intersection where it's like, hey, instead of buying a random army of overpriced SaaS tools on one side to like complement a broken system of record, which is your core fund admin today, why don't we marry that into a single source of truth where you can expose all of your data to an MCP via, LLM to Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini and like be able to action on your data. And so it's this like, oh my God, my data's super stale. Everything's broken as we're scaling. I have no idea what's going on. I have no visibility. To, oh my God, the only way to duct tape this together is buy 20 other SaaS tools. And we solve both those problems.
Isn't it really hard to switch a fund admin though? Like it's got to be one of the most difficult problems in the history of humanity.
So I joke, I literally I'll be on like a first call with a CFO and I'll be like, look, I know I'm asking you to marry me on the first date, but here's what we're doing, right? Because like it is and I take that like insanely seriously of like, the level of trust that our customers put in us, like that's what keeps me up at night, right? Of like how much I care about their trust and what that matters. And so one, it's a massive decision. Two is, oh my God, Hanover Park's amazing, but isn't it such a pain in the ass to switch? That's literally what everyone says.
Like, that seems like that would be the disqualifier. Like seems cool, but like I don't want to do this.
I don't want to deal with this.
I'm not going to put up with this.
And so I literally tell our team, like we're building a one-click migration future. Today, it's not one click, obviously. We did migrate someone in, only a handful of days, which was pretty crazy. Shout out Mackenzie at Asylum Ventures. She's amazing. And so we did that. But our goal is now, like, what's possible with AI is like, there's a lot of long horizon agents that can run for hours and hours and days. And we're experimenting right now on how that can supercharge migration. And so I see a future where we get to one-click migration.
Really? What needs to happen, you think, to get there? Just do the models have to get better? Does the context windows have to get longer?
I think it's just if you're a world-class engineer that's looking at this, this is a example of like a really fun technical challenge to work on, which is like super challenging technical problem, wrangling the most complex financial data in the world. It's really just like eng bandwidth plus, some pushes on the frontier of like, how do we think about these like long running agents that need to operate over days and weeks, not minutes?
So that is probably like the big kind of just like overarching problem that people are trying to solve right now is like cracking how to speed this up.
Yeah, I think it's a massive problem that like traditionally people have like hired an army of humans to solve it. And it's like, well, if that doesn't deliver a 10x better experience, like what would? And I think there's an opportunity to do that.
And I know there was a time where I think when you first kind of started the company or getting customers, and it's even like harder ask back when you started it. I think you promised that you'd literally sleep in people's office until the migration was done. Is that still a thing that you promised?
People have been like, don't sleep in my office. What are you talking about? I don't want you here, Chris. I don't want to spend more time with you. So that happened. It did. I'll never forget though, one of our earliest customers. And like, by the way, I have like a crazy place in my heart for like our earliest customers that trusted us with their most important financial data. And I was one of our earlier customers and I'm on a call with him on like a Tuesday. And he's like, and I'm like, hey, where do you live? Where are you at? And he's like, why are you asking me where I live? And he's like, I'm in this like random town in Florida. And I'm like, okay, I'm booking a flight right now. I'm coming down to fly. This was like the first call. He's like, who is this guy?
So he wasn't a customer yet.
No, a prospective customer. And I'm literally booked the flight and I go and literally me and him spend like 5 hours at his house. I'd like till like 2 a.m, basically like talking about how the future of finance is possible. They became one of our earlier like key critical customers and has been like a massive advocate for us. So it's credit to them and kind of like what happened. But in the early days, like do whatever it takes to win.
What did you talk about in that 5 hours?
Oh my God.
Like what was the biggest takeaway?
Everything that was broken about the current, system. He had been, using a legacy fund admin. He had been duct taping additional tools on top. And because a lot of the problems is like, oh my God, this might be surprising for the audience, but like CFOs don't have visibility in real time of anything that's going on. That's crazy. Think about you're making $100 million investment decisions, but you don't know what's going on today with your data. And so he was constantly struggling with, I have no idea what's going on. I'm asking these humans to book cash and do super basic things. It gets delayed by weeks and weeks and weeks and months. And I tried to buy another SaaS tool, but it had the same problem because it didn't talk to my underlying data, right? So it was just a frustration layer. And with what's possible with AI now, like I think now is the time where we should solve that problem.
Speaking of real-time data, I have another portfolio company. She was just on the podcast a couple weeks ago, Artie. They basically enable real-time data, basically syncing between all your databases, the data warehouse. I don't know if you guys have tried it yet, but I'm giving a plug.
The plug.
I'm giving a plug. This is
on pod plug. Have not tried it.
You've not tried it. It might be interesting. We can maybe talk about it after. I'll throw a link in the show notes if people want to check out that episode. But basically, like their thesis is if you have AI agents that are like doing things automatically, you just need real-time data. Everything needs to be synced because if something's off by, let's say you have to wait for a sync or the data's off and the agent starts to make a decision, like you're making decisions and it's just doing things with incorrect information.
100%.
So you mentioned getting on the plane. You jumped on this plane, went down and talked to the customer in Florida, spent 5 hours at his house. That's something, the first episode, we spent a lot of time talking about like what you had learned about sales before you started Hanover. You spent some time at Meow. I don't know to what extent we should re-hit on that stuff and to what extent we should talk about how you're thinking about understanding how to sell things, understanding customers has evolved over time. But it may be interesting for the first people hearing this for the first time. What was Meow and what was your like journey like there?
Yeah, so ended up joining Series A FinTech that was doing business banking, helped us scale from 10 to 1,000-ish customers, became chief revenue officer of the business. Brandon and Bryce, the founders of Meow, were the first checks almost pre-idea into Hanover Park today. And so ton of respect and credit for them. But it taught me a lot. It literally SVB collapsed. We scaled exponentially, closed hundreds of customers myself personally. And I wrote this almost manifesto, which I call always get on the plane, that I think is become popular now. I think people are just stealing my tweet and retweeting it. But it's
you came up with this?
I came up with this.
Okay.
Yeah. So I wrote this thing of always get on the plane. And the key principle is the following. If you are asking someone to trust you with something as important as what we build and what we sell, the fact that if I won't get on the plane to spend 4 hours in a room with them, this is a decade-long relationship.
Yeah,
right?
Can they really trust you if you're not going to do that?
And it's I can't build trust over a Zoom call, right? And so I did this, I popularized it, and now it is one of the key philosophies, especially for us. And so, there was a 10-person finance team at a massive private equity firm that we're talking to that like, I literally told them, I was like, I'll just go to your office wherever in random place in California. And like, I'm going to be there for 5 hours with their whole finance team. After 5 hours, you really get a chance to know someone and you build that level of like, let's just be honest with each other about like what the trust and the blunt feedback is. And so I've like obsessively been focused on this always get on the plane thing. And I'm glad to see like people are taking it.
Yeah. So how do you manage that though? Like you're trying to run a company, you're trying to hire and recruit people, and then suddenly in 2 hours you got a flight, you got to jump on, and you're spending 2 days in a random town in California.
Yeah. So look, time management prioritization. There's just like, there has to be like a level of like, okay, how do we think about what is the highest ROI thing? I think a lot about like, I've taken a lot of inspo from Elon on this of like, what is the limiting factor in the company? And then how do I parachute myself into the biggest problem? And how do I take that and like obsess over that problem until it's solved? And so, limiting factor is migration. We need to go like parachute in, work with our head of ops, Emily, who joined, and like obsess over what does AI native migration look like, right? So at different times, whatever the limiting factors in the company, my job is like jump into battle and figure it out.
One of the things that you've done really well, people call it founder-led sales, where you're like, I think you said you're the only person that's like on the sales team.
Still, I don't know how. I'm just a founder with a plan. I'm not even a sales guy.
Yeah. So, and maybe it's like not sales. It's just like trust building. You're trying to understand customers, trying to solve their problems. So what's been the biggest learnings you've had over the past 21 months since you wrote the first line of code and started onboarding customers?
Yeah, I think and we're definitely in founder-led sales mode too long. We're at 15 billion of assets on platform. That's probably a little too long. And it's been something I've held on to, just given how critical and customer trust is and how that interacts with like product and eng on that side. But for me, I've really tried to transition from how do I get our first 5, 10, 15 customers into a position of like, how do I make sure that these people can become raving fans? Which I think is like a very different philosophy. And like all the worst parts about sales in general of like, I'm just trying to get them like some sales guy with commission. Obviously, I'm a founder with no commission. And so like, what I think about is like, if our number one goal in 2026 is every customer's a raving fan, that is very, very hard in our industry. That's like the craziest thing ever, right? And so with how unhappy most customers are with their current providers. And so my goal is that, how do we set and manage expectations prior to signing any contract to ensure that they can be successful in their first 100 days plus? And so it's a lot of been like, hey, we've proven we can do it with your peers, with your counterparts. Here's 5 other customers that are exactly like you guys that we can service. How do we make sure that you're a raving fan in 12 months?
You mentioned it was different getting the first 5 to 10 customers and making people raving fans. How did you get the first couple of people on board? Because you had built this general ledger from scratch. You had no customers. And then suddenly you're like, hey, trust us with like to manage your fund.
So I got to give a lot of credit. I'm going to give a shout out to Chad at Susa, founder of Susa, Pratyush, Kenny, who's their CFO. I love you, Kenny. You're literally like, they were our first customer. And so I literally was like, hey, we're doing this. You're our first investor. They didn't want to move over everything to start. That's a crazy thing to be like, hey, move over all of your funds to an unknown provider called Hanover Park that you invested in a seed round for the most important thing for your firm, which is all of your LP relationships. And they were literally like, it took some convincing. It took some trust building, but they ended up doing it. And like, that was obviously like a critical kind of like first customer. But like the people after that, it was like, hey, I will literally like do whatever it takes to ensure that this is successful. I don't care if I need to sleep at your office. I don't care if I need to book the entries myself. It's just all about like, hey, we're taking this journey together. Here's why this can be a super compelling future. But like, look me in the eyes and say like, I will deliver for you. And that's how we got the first 5 or 10.
And you had this concept of, I think it's called polite persistence. Is that the phrasing?
Yeah.
So was there a lot of that? Like you had to continue to be getting in front of people, continuing to, what was that process like?
I mean, text, call, carrier pigeon, email, LinkedIn DM, Twitter. It was really anything. And like, I kind of see like in the earliest days and even now, it's like, whatever it takes to win, do. And I think like people don't take that seriously enough of like, I think any company, it's like you should have a level of obsession and desperation where it's like, I will literally do whatever it physically is possible to make this happen. And so we've I took that very literally, 10 texting, calling, voicemails, whatever. And because the reason why I did that is I know that this is the right future that you should be moving to. Mm-hmm. I know this is scary, but we got you. We're going to execute well for you and we're going to make this happen. And so that was a lot of the early trust building plus just obsessive play persistence.
How do you avoid being annoying in that process though? Because when I have somebody that's constantly hey, did you see this message? Hey, I'm just following up. I usually kind of start to tune that out.
Yep.
So how do you not do
a
that?
lot of jokes? Yeah. If someone's calling you being hey, it's me calling you. Hey, it's me randomly calling you, Turner. I'm sure you're really excited to hear from me right now. There's a little bit of humor and fun to it of hey, it comes off as very authentic if you're actually believe in what you're building and selling versus some random sales guy who's sending a friendly follow-up 58 times, which no one cares about. And so that's been a lot of the focus, which is how do I build trust while also being persistent?
And so now you're making this transition and making people raving fans. How do you be a raving fan? As a CFO, what are you happy about? What are you telling your friends in the CFO group chat of Hanover Park is so great?
It's a raving. So there's the three elements to a raving fan that I think about. One is amazing onboarding, deployment, migration. That's the one-click migration thing we talked about earlier, which is how do we make this experience where literally you sign a contract, you give us data access, and you put your feet up on the table and never think about this again. That is incredibly challenging, right? And we've done this now for customers, and people have been you told me migration wasn't going to be bad. It's amazing, right? So that's the first piece. The second piece is taking the fund admin services from reactive to proactive. And so how do we use AI to supercharge services delivery by saying, no, I don't need to wait days or weeks or months to see this action happening. I can see things in almost real time, right? So that's the second piece. And then the third piece is jaw-dropping AI native product experiences. And so it's not good enough to just deliver fund admin or the core service delivery. It's how do we unlock and build something magical on top of that data that no one else could offer, right? And so that's been the three elements, and hitting those are things that I care deeply about tracking and monitoring and focusing on.
Was there a time when you kind of knew things were kind of working, you were just getting the scale sort of tipping towards more positive feedback in momentum versus not?
Yeah, I think after 5 billion of assets, now we're almost 15 billion. After 5, things started moving downhill. Ecosystem started to pick up of people being have you heard this Hanover Park thing? Despite us doing not a ton of marketing aside from me tweeting and posting on LinkedIn, right? And so we started to get this positive momentum in ecosystem of oh my God, this could be the future. The idea of vertically integrating the core accounting system and building all these magical moments on top could be possible. And so that's when things started to kind of snowball. And then now it's just been let's make sure we can catch the snowball rolling down the hill.
And kind of hitting on the content that you post online, you are probably one of the, if somebody were to say, who's a founder that's doing founder-led content well, I'd probably send them your profiles and just check out what Chris is doing, follow his stuff. What's been sort of your process for thinking about things? And then maybe even you started making content online before you even started Hanover Park. So what's that kind of whole journey for you been like?
Yeah, so the quick primer and background on it was a college kid at Yale, literally was okay, I was reading it, and before Sam Altman was cool, in 2020, he wrote this blog post
this how to pre-ChatGPT.
Pre-ChatGPT, he was cool. He wrote this blog post, how to be successful. And I obsessively read that and was this is insanely cool. And I was okay, this startup thing might be interesting, but my dad sells commercial insurance, had no background, no ecosystem, nothing. And I was okay, there's really two ways you add value in early stage, writing code or selling code at the early stages. Wasn't a good eng, so I wanted to figure out distribution and sales and said how do I write compelling content on the internet that people would actually click on, watch, listen to. And so I did this whole interview series where I interviewed Emmett Shear at Twitch and Michael Seibel at YC and Kevin Ryan who founded MongoDB. And I turned all of that into Twitter content that went super viral. And so built the following to a few 100,000 people over the past few years. But when I started Hanover Park, I was I actually don't care about virality, which is a little bit contrarian. It doesn't matter if Elon retweets me, which he did one time, which got me 50 million views or something. Mm-hmm. That doesn't matter. It's actually if I'm trying to use this as a way in which CFOs find us, I need to write for them, which is obviously a much more niche audience than like some random like hustle tweet about like, whatever.
You're tweeting about like, the accrual-based accounting method, like closing faster. Like the average person reads that, like,
they're like,
they like block you.
Yeah, please block me. Yeah, they're like, block Chris. And it's really like the problems that a CFO faces of like, you're up at 2 a.m, your LP calls you and says like, this number's wrong. Do you ever want that problem? No, you don't. Right. So it's a lot about that in terms of like how I think about the positioning and how I think about what we're doing. And so like one of our largest customers came inbound off a LinkedIn post that had 10 likes.
So it's really not about going viral. Like going viral is not how you do founder-led sales. It's resonating with the problem that your customer is facing.
It's really just obsessive. Like all I do all day is talk to CFOs. They tell me their problems. They tell me some of the things that they're having issues with. And then we try to invent the future for them.
Do you then take that feedback? You take that feedback, put in the product, and you also, I feel like a decent amount of your content is like, I just talked to a CFO at a $1 billion private equity firm. They said this, and like, that's the content.
Yeah, I kind of think about it as like any conversation that I'm having could turn into content. So like the frame I have on this is with all the AI slop out there, you should only be writing and creating content of things that no one else could create. And a lot of that is like personal conversations. And so like I talked to the CFO about XYZ, here's what I learned. No one else had that conversation that day, right? So it's a lot about like, how do I, in a world of abundance of content, how do we have something scarce?
Do you keep like some sort of document or note where you'll like dump ideas in and you come back and visit it? Do you like plan it out Sunday night, write some content for the week? What's your process?
Yeah, like in real time, I'll like jot down things as I'm having phone calls, conversations, et cetera. And like that will be like the fodder for like the week's content.
And so I think we maybe hit this a little bit earlier. I actually don't even remember if it was before we started recording or not, but you talked about there's like a lot of the advice you kind of got or read about and heard about starting a company and building a company. I think you said like 99% of it just ended up being wrong. What's kind of the advice that you found is like most wrong?
So I think, yeah, my take on this is I think like almost all advice, like 99% of advice on scaling a company is incorrect right now. And so the traditional advice is like, oh my God, delegate everything, hire this massive team, hire like VPs to do different actions and whatever. And I'm like, a lot of that is noise and basically creates this like hierarchical political system by which like people do well by figuring out ways to take credit. My goal is like, how do we do the anti that? And I took a lot of inspiration from Elon on this of like, be at the bare metal as much as possible. Like literally like, don't talk to like 3 levels of whoever. It's like, talk to the engineer writing the code on this like AI email agent and how this works, right? And like figure that out, because the problem that creates like, if you don't do that, you create frustration for your best performers. The best performers like want a hard problem. They want the room to run and like go cook on that problem, right? And so we've like really been anti this like hierarchical system by which like information is filtered in different ways and say like, let's just cut to the source and go direct.
Isn't there an argument though that you kind of like quote unquote need like a grown up or like quote unquote need someone who's kind of done it before and knows the playbook? If you don't have like the VP that's done this before and can like share the knowledge with the team or knows what it looks like, do you miss out on that? Or
so I think what's changing a lot now with like what does it mean to build a company in the AI era, which is very different than I think the SaaS era of the 2010s, which is like the playbooks are being rewritten. What's possible is different. It used to be you have a massive sales and marketing team. Now you have inference cost, right? And like that's your sales and marketing team. And so a lot of this is I think changing of like, instead of being an army of GTM, you have like the product does the talking, right? I think it's changed a lot. And so you look at companies like Cursor that have scaled crazy with like a very small go-to-market and sales team. And so I think a lot of the playbooks are changing, which means like someone who's reusing a playbook from the last era is probably going to be not effective. However, that doesn't mean like we have multiple people that have been at companies that have exited before. They've been like senior engineers there. Like there is some level of how do we counterbalance like the hacker culture of the 20-year-old who drops out of Harvard to, what I call like the experience, like I've seen all these infrastructure problems at scale on the engineering side. And then obviously on the fund accounting team, like we are obsessively focused on bringing in expertise for like the Navy SEALs of fund accounting with like, that obviously requires a different level of experience in terms of how situations have been adopted over time.
Are there any things that you try to do based on, someone said, this is how I've done this in the past and it went horribly wrong, that you feel like hopefully people can maybe learn from, and specifically with the way that building companies have kind of changed over the past couple of years with kind of these like AI native businesses?
Yeah, I think honestly, one of the things that we like preach every single day is this idea of like one-way doors versus two-way doors. Jeff Bezos invented this where it's like a one-way door is like, if you make a decision in this way, you literally can't go back. It's impossible. So an example would be the investors you have on your cap table, you can't get rid of them, right? They're one-way door. They're here for the life of the company. The two-way door is, hey, we can make a decision. It's easy to go back at any time. And those are almost all decisions in a startup. And so what we've done is like, drop your ego to the ground, be intellectually honest about truth seeking of like, what's the right answer to the company, and make a fast decision because you can always revert back really easily at any point in time. And so like empowering the team to say, make really fast two-way doors without bogging it down in process to create a committee to figure out if that makes sense to make a decision. It's better to have iterated 5 times before the committee even gets out of bed.
How do you know if something's like a one or two-way door? Like, is there a gut check on like, hey, we know this is reversible or won't, blow up the product or customer trust or something like that?
Examples would be like, shipping an internal accounting update for our fund accounting team is very two-way door. If it doesn't work in 5 seconds, we can update it and nothing changes, right? Versus like, one-way door is like a massive change to our LP portal, right? Which is like what the massive endowments and banks in the world log into every day across our 10,000 different limited partners. And so I think it's more like that's on the product decisioning side of like, okay, great. That is still a two-way door because you can revert quickly, but it's something that we'll take a little bit more seriously.
And so you started initially, you kind of mentioned Susa Ventures was the first customer.
One, shout out.
Shout out to Chad Pratyush and Kenny.
And Kenny. Kenny's a legend. He's the one with all the credit.
Nice. I've never met Kenny before. Next time I'm near the office, I should try to
do it.
Try to meet all of them or try to meet Kenny. And so how did you kind of expand customer base over time? Because your first couple customers were all VC firms. You seemed like you kind of have like been like laddering up almost, I guess. I don't know how to describe this, but like what's the process been like of expanding?
Part of our goal is like, we want to build for complexity, which is like the most complex firms in the world have blockers and splitters and aggregators and triple parallel funds and UK subsidiaries and different currencies. There's all this noise, right? If you were just built for a $10 million venture fund, obviously you're not the right partner and customer for them or customer fit. And so what we've done is we said, okay, we need to solve this cold start problem. We need to get our first 10 customers. We're going to do that in venture capital, but we've quickly expanded into other asset classes like private equity and soon private credit as well, where we knew the needs are much more sophisticated and we built for that future. And now has been like kind of a great opportunity to expand in these different types of asset classes. And so we launched a product recently, breaking news, on AI native waterfall modeling. And so in natural language, I can run my deal by deal waterfall if I'm a CFO, which would take hours and hours and days and wrong, and it's not correct. And it's like 7 different system exports that we've made instantaneous in natural language to run these scenarios. And so that would be a product that a private equity firm would fall in love with.
So how do you know that something like that is accurate?
Yeah. Great question.
Because I fuck it up even when I make it manually in Excel. Like I'll forget to drag a formula and I'll notice it like later, like, error checking everything.
Yeah. One of the key product principles of the company is what I call like trust but verify. And so it's like, it's not like if you just give someone a number, assume every single CFO, they're the most skeptical people on the planet, they're going to assume it's wrong. You need to be able to have them click into it, export, run their own calculations to like verify the accuracy of a number. And so, the trust but verify approach on the waterfall modeling plus the explainability. Like the beautiful thing is like AI can tell you where the work's coming from. It can say like, hey, we went through these 3 different tiers of our waterfall and here's exactly what happened, right? And so that plus the auditability and explainability has been a critical kind of pillar.
And it's all when you export to Excel, it comes with like linked formulas and everything. Am I remembering this right?
Yeah. I mean, this is actually really fun. I think there's been 2 different approaches in the market when it comes to this. One is, hey, it's a bunch of manual, like humans running around with like really big Excel files. That's one. The problem with that approach is it's very error prone and manual and slow, but it gives you some auditability because it has formulas. The other approach, which is like a very 2018 SaaS approach, was like, hey, I'm going to give you just a UI. Great, it's at least something, but it's just hard-coded export randomly with no connectivity. We don't think either of those is the right solution. So we actually built an Excel replacement in the browser, similar to Ramp Sheets or Try Shortcut. There's these tools that do this like generally. We built this specific for our industry for fund CFOs, which enables us to instantly generate all the financial reporting without having to go into this crazy offline process. And so we think we've kind of married like best of both worlds when we think about the reporting aspect with the auditability of like formulas across the different Excel replacement that we built.
Can you still export it to Excel?
Always.
Yeah.
Everything's exportable.
I was going to say, like, I just don't think if you told a CFO everything we've just described about Hanover Park, but you can't use Excel anymore,
it's over.
That's even harder than the migration of a whole provider is like getting them off Excel. Like the industry runs on Excel.
Yep.
And I think you have a nickname with your friends. They call you Chip.
Oh boy.
What's going on with
this is
Chip?
coming up. This is coming up. So my friends will shout out Raj and my friends. But like when I started the company, everyone was like, "You're crazy. What are you doing? You just like, left this job and previously left Goldman Sachs. And like, this is insane. What are you working on? What are you doing?" And I basically had this thing where like I had this massive chip on my shoulder. I love this quote from Josh Wolf at Lux Capital, which is chips on shoulders, put chips in pockets. And now that, Peter and Lux have invested, it's kind of entertaining for it to be full circle, which is like, everyone started calling me Chip because they were like, wow, he has this like massive chip on his shoulder because everyone doubted that this would be successful. We still have a lot of work to prove it though.
Yeah. I think one thing that's been kind of interesting is despite you have like this chip on your shoulder, you really want to be successful. There's been times that you've turned down customers, like somebody you don't think that you can take them on and like give them the right kind of service. How do you know when to do that?
Yeah. I think like ideal customer profile, which is like a common term, has become like insanely important for us. Like I am deathly afraid of disappointment, right? Which is disappointing a customer that is really excited about Hanover Park that we can't deliver what we need to deliver for them. And a lot of the problems in that is like you take on too many customers that are not the right profile, that have different needs from who you're focusing on. And so you don't end up building for them. You end up with a bunch of people that are asking for things that don't match, right? And that's a massive problem. And so I'm turning away customers left and right to ensure the people we do partner with have the A+ raving fan experience that we want to deliver. And so that's kind of been the focus of like, it sounds crazy, but like we'll turn away customers all the time to ensure that the customer base we have can become raving fans in 2026.
But don't you want to grow super fast? Like that's kind of like the point of hyper growth startup, right? Is grow as fast as possible. Isn't that what they say?
I think grow as fast as possible with like, the right constraints of who you're building for. And so obviously there's a massive market, right, of like opportunity. And we've just focused, I would say, on like mid-market enterprise, which are like larger firms with finance teams, more sophisticated CFOs than some of the kind of the smaller firms. That doesn't mean in the future we won't go there. I just think like it is not a near term. It might be a long term as we are able to like democratize the like services delivery that we have and make it scalable.
Talking about longer term, what is kind of like the longer term, like 10 years from now? I don't know if we're going to do this every single year.
Yeah,
like,
we do it every year for the next decade.
Yeah, but like, I mean, talking about 10 years from now, whatever the long term is. Like I'm reading the S1 for Hanover Park. You're like spilling it all out there. Like, what am I going to be reading about?
Yeah. Well, I think was pretty awesome is that when Jake and Emergence led our Series A, they wrote this memo and they said like, this, if executed incredibly well, we have a lot of work to do, is a Viva-like opportunity. Viva is the largest vertical software business in the world right now. It's around 50 billion market cap, which is like, but what's funny about Viva is they started as a CRM for life sciences. That is the most niche, boring thing of all time. Now they're the board level vendor for Moderna and Pfizer and like all of these different things, right?
Board level,
meaning they're the most important vendor for like Moderna and Pfizer. Like Moderna and Pfizer pay them like tens of millions of dollars a year, right? And so our goal is to do that in finance, right? And so it's like, okay, we want to become the most important vendor for Blackstone and KKR and Vista Private Equity and pick your name of like really important investment firms and not just do one siloed specific thing that they're used to. We want to like own the core like back office, own the middle office, and own all the software tool spend for the investment firm. And along the way, have the opportunity to like bundle all these additional products and service offerings around it. And then in the super long term, if now all of this data that used to be in 50 different random tools is now in one centralized system of record, why can't we help people make better decisions and unlock alpha and do that for the investment firm? And so that's the super long term.
So I have one more thing I want to ask you. Your kind of like personal AI stack, like what you use personally as like Chris. So I think a year ago you told me you were using Claude artifacts and you were also using something called Hemingway for writing.
Yep.
What's still using those? What's
number one tool right now? Granola. It's just like AI call. So like what we do is a lot of our internal calls is like we'll basically record any meeting. And then we have this like transcript repository that you can query and do a bunch of analysis on. And so like that really helps with like context sharing across teams, especially as we've scaled the team really quickly. And so that's been one. The other is like, I am obsessed with Claude Cowork. Claude Cowork has changed everything. Claude Cowork is my ChatGPT moment. Like actually.
So not even ChatGPT, like Claude Cowork was yours.
Claude Cowork is like 10 times better than for ChatGPT than me. It's crazy. Like what it's basically done is I used to be an investment banker. I used to have to put PowerPoints together. I used to put financial models together. I am now like, I did this massively important presentation for $1 trillion of assets. And legitimately, Claude Cowork took call transcripts, notes, all of this stuff. And I was like, here's the format of a different deck. Build me this 10-slide thing from scratch with all of these graphs. It one-shotted it. I made like an hour of modifications of something that would have taken me 10 hours and I was done. And so it's been transformational when I think about like all of the data analysis stuff as well as like building presentations.
You said you built this kind of like central to-do list thing. I remember you were texting about like, what is it exactly?
Oh yeah.
Did you use it or it's just like a fun thing you try to do? Or?
So I'm literally like, as like the non-technical CEO that wants to be closer to the bare metal, I was like, AI coding tools are so much better. So I literally whipped up Claude Code this past weekend. I was like, I'm going to vibe code a like CEO command center basically to make decisions. And it was like pulling in all of Slack, all of email, all of Google Calendar, all of my Granola notes, all of these different sources to like build a dashboard to help me be like, what are the decisions that I need to action on right now? And then like a self-updating to-do list that's synced with my email and other things. And so it's been pretty fun. It's still like super experimental. Like I did it for 2 hours on a Saturday, but it's been pretty fun to play around with.
Is it like you get like a feed that's updating every minute, like synced with Slack, and you're like typing in, hitting enter to like make it do things? Like how does it actually work?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It is. So it's updating like, I think it's like every hour or something, pulled together from like any activity over Slack, over email, over calendar, over anything. Linear is another one. Like we pull in like our product issues and stuff like that. And so all the activity feeds in. And then if I want to like update the dashboard, it's like, I'm just connecting to a bunch of MCP servers and I'm, literally prompting Claude Code to do things. And so it'll just auto up to like, say it's like, hey, you need to respond to this email. It's super critical about this deal. Once I respond to the email, it just auto updates.
In the dashboard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's the thing that I've always had, the issue I've had with these like to-do lists is like, you make your to-do list and then you go and do the thing and you like go and change the to-do list. It's like,
what's going on? Yeah.
So like I've always had super simple to-do lists that are basically like high level, bang out this hour thing. And then you like, maybe it's worth updating. But like there's some people make these like super elaborate, like very minute to-do lists. It's like you're spending half your time on your to-do list.
I mean, I think it's like this like, productivity optimization sometimes is procrastination. I think is like the piece of it of like, if you're doing too much, like the simplest execution should be like, I'm doing this thing today and here's the most important problem to solve and everything else is noise.
And you just announced, I think you mentioned earlier, the Hanover MCP. So what is that and what can you do with it if you're a customer?
So breaking news, Hanover Park MCP is live now. What this enables us to do is MCP, think about it as API for AI. And so instead of having many different disconnected data sources, the really cool thing about Hanover Park is because we are doing your core accounting execution, we have all of your system of record data. That's what gets audited. That's what gets sent to your limited partners. That's what you get your financials. On top of that data, we built some magical things like now we have all your LP data organized. We have all your portfolio data extracted. We have all your KPIs collected, all this stuff. Now with our MCP, it can be like, I don't even need my GP to log into Hanover Park. I can just tag it right into Claude alongside our CRM from Adio, and I can just query the full context of my data and generate PDFs on the fly. And so it's been a pretty magical opportunity for customers and excited to see where it goes.
You mentioned Adio. Did you switch over to Adio?
I didn't. I'm a HubSpot stan.
Okay.
Like it'd be old school. Use HubSpot for CRM right now, but I'm thinking about new things like Monaco and others.
Oh, nice.
Shout out Sam Blonde.
Yeah, I actually need to respond to my DM and I was like, hey, want to come on the podcast, talk about Monaco, everything you've learned about sales and growth. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. I think we're going to do it in a couple of weeks. So if you're listening to this, look out for that episode. I think we have a couple, let's see, I think it's either right before this or right after. We have one with my friend Chethan at Benchmark. We're talking all about software. We have an episode with Scott Stevenson at Spellbook. It's like the fastest growing AI company in Canada.
Yeah.
We think that that's a true statement.
Is that true?
We think based
Legal,
on
right?
what he's heard from. Yeah. It's sort of like Cursor for contracts. So if you're a lawyer, a lot of the work you're doing is like with contracts. It's essentially like a Microsoft Word plugin where you can sort of like edit contracts like you would code, essentially. And like if you're a lawyer, a lot of your job is just like writing legal documents and editing legal documents. It just like helps you do it faster. And they have a couple other, it's almost like Claude Cowork for doing legal things. So you can say, hey, write me this document based on these things and just go and do it. It's pretty interesting. I'm trying to think of who else we have. We have Mike and Nikhil at Footwork. I don't know if you ever met them throughout the course of fundraising, but Nikhil was a seed investor in Canva, Farmer's Dog, probably missing a couple like multi-billion dollar companies. And then Mike was the COO of Stitch Fix, 0 to $1 billion in revenue, ran Walmart.com, was like the in charge of all that, thousands of employees. Walmart.com is pretty big now. So anyways, a lot of good conversations coming up on the podcast people should continue listening to.
Love it.
Subscribe to the show, subscribe to the newsletter.
Plug.
I might not even have to do an outro now. We can just do the outro right now. Also, thanks to Numeral and Flex for sponsoring the show. Check out numeral.com for sales tax. Do you guys have sales tax you have to collect? Are you using Numeral?
We're not using Numeral yet. What are you talking about?
You should use Numeral.
Whoa. That's good.
And then other sponsor is Flex, which I use for the fund. If you check out the link in the description, sign up for the wait list, you'll get the Flex Elite personal card. It's like business and personal banking all in one.
Let's go.
And they give you credit. So there's a lot of guys out there that'll say, oh, we'll give you like a credit card, quote unquote, just based on your bank account and what kind of cash, they'll give you a percentage of it. Flex actually gives you like a credit card, underwrites it like Amex. So worth checking all those out.
Let's go.
Thanks for listening. See you guys next time.
See you soon.